Rumors had been spreading for weeks in Phoenix about agents letting weapons walk across the border, and no one could make sense of it. What began as a covert experiment inside the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives quickly became one of the most explosive scandals of the decade: Operation Fast and Furious. Launched in 2009 as part of the Justice Department's Project Gunrunner, Fast and Furious was meant to disrupt Mexican cartels by tracing the flow of weapons from U.S. gun shops to cartel bosses. The idea sounded simple: allow suspected straw purchasers to buy rifles and pistols, follow them as they moved, and then roll up the network at the top. In practice, the operation risked everything it claimed to protect. Field agents in Phoenix watched dozens of weapons leave the United States, often on ladders of surveillance that fell apart the moment buyers put them in trucks and crossed the border. Agents raised alarms internally, most notably John Dodson, an ATF agent who would later become a whistleblower, warning supervisors that the tactic was letting crime flourish rather than stopping it. Supervisors, intent on capturing higher-level traffickers and persuading bystanders that they were targeting kingpins, ordered restraint. They did not stop the sales. They did not interdict the guns. They did not alert Mexican authorities in the way many thought they should. That restraint turned fatal on the night of December 14, 2010. U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed in a shootout near Rio Rico, Arizona. 2 AK-style rifles recovered at the scene were later traced back to Fast and Furious. The discovery detonated years of bureaucratic secrecy into public outrage. Families of victims in Mexico produced their own lists of crimes tied to weapons that had been allowed to pass through American hands. The simple, chilling question took hold: whose side was law enforcement on? Congressional investigators dug in. Testimony and documents revealed a pattern: internal memos, inconsistent oversight, and a decision-making chain that prioritized a risky strategy over immediate intervention. The Department of Justice's own Inspector General concluded that ATF supervisors had abandoned common-sense tactics, and that justice attorneys had provided advice inconsistent with preserving public safety. In 2012, the House of Representatives voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt for failing to produce certain documents related to the operation, an unprecedented rebuke for a sitting Attorney General. Fast and Furious was no single act of malice, so much as a cascade of misjudgments, institutional hubris, and, ultimately, a cover-up. The conspiracy at the heart of the scandal wasn't a shadowy cabal, but a chain of decisions: a Phoenix strategy to walk guns, a Justice Department reticence to share full information, and an internal culture that sidelined rank-and-file concerns. Those choices allowed hundreds of weapons to end up in violent hands and turned a law enforcement agency into the target of international condemnation. The fallout was real and tangible. Senior officials were reassigned or resigned. Internal policies governing gun tracing and interagency cooperation were rewritten. Victims on both sides of the border demanded accountability. For agents like Dodson and for families of the dead, the story was a lesson in how secrecy and risky tactics can produce catastrophic human costs. A decade on, Fast and Furious remains a cautionary tale, a documentary of how strategy gone wrong, combined with institutional opacity, can produce a conspiracy in practice, if not by design. It is the story of weapons that walked, of warnings ignored, and of a slow, painful reckoning in the long shadow of a single failed experiment.